2025 is almost over, and I'm glad to report that this little BMW is still alive. So let's do a quick recap of the year, a kind of a 2025 E46 compact wrapped, if you will. We closed the previous year with 510,136 kilometers. And right now the odometer reads slightly above the 536,000, which gives us a total of 26,000 kilometers in 2025. Not bad. We started the year with replacing the valve cover gasket, which is something I just kept postponing because of how daunting the task of removing the injectors seemed to me. Because I've heard so many stories of people having trouble removing diesel injectors, I thought this was going to be impossible, but it turned out to be okay in the end. So I replaced that, and obviously after replacing such an important item, I had to go to the racetrack to test that the car was okay. After the racetrack, I had to replace the usual consumable items, such as the brake pads and the tires. Then we had a pretty rainy spring, and somehow water got into my AC tensioner pulley. So it started squeaking and I had to replace that. And then the car developed another classic E46 issue, which is an oil leak around the vacuum pump. So I took care of that as well. Later, as we entered into the summer and I started using my AC a little bit more, I've noticed hot air coming from the top vents. And this turned out to be because of the heater valve getting stuck in the open position. So yes, I fixed that as well. Then the car was quite alright for a while. So I figured, hey, let's do a road trip from Spain to Poland. And it was absolutely awesome. It wasn't all smooth sailing. We had a couple of hiccups along the road, mainly the AC belt and the alternator, the road trip classics. Because your alternator is never going to fail when you're close to home. No. It has to wait until you cross 3 different countries and you are 2,000 kilometers away from home, and then it decides to fail. But fortunately, this happened when we were in Poland, which is the best place on earth to have problems with an old BMW. So we sourced a new alternator and I replaced it on the trip. I replaced it, it was all okay, we got home safe and sound, and after this huge journey I decided it was time to give this car some proper rest. Nah, just kidding. I took it to the racetrack again and had an awesome time chasing a Ford Focus. Yeah, it was real fun. After that, I was shocked to discover that the valve cover was leaking yet once again. And I thought it was because I didn't tighten the valve cover bolts enough. So I tried torquing them a little bit more and, of course, snapped one of the bolts in the process, which gave me the enormous pleasure of redoing this whole job all over again, this time making sure to use a torque wrench to tighten all the bolts. And finally, at the beginning of December, I was getting pretty tired of all the rattles inside of the car, so I decided to replace the engine mounts, which turned out to be completely shot. And that brings us to today. All in all, it's been a great year, and as you can see, despite of the mileage, I still use this car almost every day for almost everything. And I have all the intentions of using it just as much in 2026. But for that, the car first must pass its yearly tech inspection. And that's exactly what I have to do next. So first of all, I have to do an oil change because it's been 13,000 kilometers since the last oil change. I like to do this normally every 10,000 kilometers, but this time I waited a little bit longer. And I also need to change the front tires because this year I went a little bit too aggressive on the track, and as a result the tires got chewed pretty bad on the outer flanks. And I don't think the guy at the tech inspection will be giving me a pass on that one. And now the only other possible source of trouble is this. As you can observe, I can see the ground from above. And if I am able to see the ground from above, it means that someone with a flashlight will be able to see my dirty engine from below, which could lead them into thinking that my engine is leaking oil, which is not anymore, which could then result in my car not passing tech inspection. Normally there's a plastic panel covering this gap, but I am pretty sure mine got lost somewhere in France on my return trip from Poland. Yeah, I am confident it was here. Fortunately, after speaking to a lot of people, I was able to find one online. So let's install it. And with that out of the way, let's see if this car is roadworthy for another year. Well, I'm not gonna lie, that turned out to be easier than I expected. It turns out that if you spend the entire year taking care after your vehicle, you don't have that many troubles passing the tech inspection. Crazy, right? Who would have thought? But anyway, that's gonna be all for 2025. I wish you all a happy new year and a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you all with more E46 compact adventures in 2026.